Imagine for a second. What would you do if your president ordered you to empty the entire national treasury at 2 o'clock in the morning? Just 48 hours before a superpower invades your country. If you were living in Baghdad on March 18, 2003, you wouldn't ask questions. You would simply obey. The city was a ghost of its former self during those final hours. International journalists had already fled in armored convoys, while the UN weapons inspectors had vanished from the scene. Families were hunkered down in their basements with sacks of rice and cans of kerosene, waiting for a sky full of Tomahawk missiles. But while the world watched the military borders, the real collapse was happening deep inside a secure study on the third floor of the presidential palace. Saddam Hussein sat at his desk, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the scent of old paper. He wasn't wearing his ceremonial medals or insignia, just his plain military fatigues. The ones he wore when he didn't want a formal record of his actions. He signed a single sheet of presidential letterhead, and the order was chillingly simple. It instructed the central bank to release $920 million in U.S. currency and 100 million euros to the bearer. There was no itemized budget, no oversight committee, just two words for the purpose: national security. He signed his name, and the ink glistened under the desk lamp as a nation's future was signed away. Welcome back to the channel. I am the Digital Sleuth. Today we are peeling back the layers on the largest bank robbery in human history. This isn't just a story of trucks and soldiers. It is a masterclass in financial fraud mechanics and the ultimate example of state-sponsored theft. In this cybercrime documentary, we are going to look at how a regime loots its own bloodline, the digital and physical ripples it sent through the world, and how this old-school heist mirrors the high-tech dark web scams we see today. At 2:17 a.m., the phone rang in the home of Central Bank Governor Saad al-Rawi. He hadn't been sleeping. Nobody in Baghdad slept properly anymore. In a dictatorship, a 2:00 a.m. phone call is never good news. The voice on the other end didn't exchange pleasantries. Al-Rawi was told to report to the bank in 30 minutes. Prepare the main vault and speak to no one. When he arrived, the air was cold and the halls were silent. The central bank was a fortress with walls 3 feet thick, built to survive the Iran-Iraq war and decades of sanctions. But the hard truth is that no vault is strong enough to keep out the man who owns the key. Compliance wasn't just a choice for al-Rawi. It was survival. At 4:12 a.m., 3 unmarked trucks backed into the loading bay. They weren't escorted by regular army soldiers. These were the Special Republican Guard, tribal loyalists from Tikrit. Leading them was Qusay Hussein, Saddam's younger son and the heir apparent. He was the quiet one, the methodical one who managed the country's security apparatus with cold precision. We often talk about financial fraud in the digital age as abstract bits and bytes. But wealth has physical mass. We need to look at the staggering logistics of this moment. $1 million in $100 bills weighs about 22 pounds. We are talking about nearly $1 billion here. That is over 20 tons of physical cash for 5 long hours. Bank staff moved like ghosts in the fluorescent light. Lift, stack, sign, repeat. They were loading aluminum military cases filled with shrink-wrapped bricks of $100 bills. Each brick had 100 bills. Some of these notes were sequential and pristine, having never been circulated. They were taking the very reserves meant to pay salaries and sustain the state. As the sun began to peek over the horizon at 9:00 a.m., the vaults were empty. The trucks disappeared into the labyrinth of Baghdad's alleyways. And by that evening, the first cruise missiles would strike. The country was already hollowed out from the inside. Now you might be thinking, Sleuth. This was 2003. This was physical paper. What does this have to do with the digital age? The answer is everything. What Saddam did was the analog precursor to the major phishing attacks and international fraud cases we see today. It was an inside job on a national scale. In our modern cybersecurity reports, we see this exact same pattern with state-sponsored actors. Consider the Lazarus Group or the Bangladesh bank heist of 2016. In that digital case, hackers used stolen SWIFT credentials to try and move nearly $1 billion, almost the exact same amount as Saddam, out of a central bank. The only difference is that Saddam used trucks while the hackers used code. In the world of internet mysteries, the biggest question is always, where did the money go? Of the $1 billion taken? U.S. forces eventually found $650 million hidden behind a false wall in a palace basement, but $270 million. It simply vanished into the fog of war. In the modern context, we see this constantly in dark web scams. When a major crypto exchange collapses or a rug pull happens, the perpetrators use tumblers or mixers to obfuscate the trail. In 2003, Saddam used the chaos of a falling regime as his physical mixer. That missing $270 million likely funded the insurgency for years. Paying for weapons and bribes, it was offline money. The original untraceable currency. To truly understand the technical side of this, we have to look at the cybersecurity protocols. Or rather, the complete lack of them. Saddam's Iraq operated on a protocol of fear. There was no multi-factor authentication or verification process. There was only the signature of the autocrat, which served as the ultimate root access. When that treasury was emptied, the social fabric of the country tore instantly. The economic chain reaction mirrored the military assault. Inflation spiraled out of control. A loaf of bread that cost 250 dinars on March 18th skyrocketed to 1,500 by the next week. By April, people were trading jewelry for medicine. The banking grid went dark and ATMs were useless. This was the ultimate denial of service attack. By removing the data, which was the cash, Saddam crashed the operating system of the entire nation. In our cybercrime documentaries, we often focus on the thief, but we need to focus on the vulnerability. The vulnerability here was extreme centralization. When one person or one server has total and unchecked access to the entire system, that system is fundamentally broken and waiting to be exploited. The fall of Saddam was the end of a regime. But for us, it is a permanent lesson. Whether it is a dictator with a pen or a hacker with a phishing link, the goal is always to exploit trust. How do we prevent this in our own digital lives? Whether you are running a business or just protecting your personal savings, I have 3 sleuth tips for you. First, use distributed authority. Never allow a single point of failure. In the tech world, this means using multi-signature wallets for crypto or requiring 2-person integrity for any large bank transfers. Second, you must always verify the bearer. Qusay Hussein was the bearer of that document. And today, that document is often a spoofed email from your boss. Always use an out-of-band verification like a quick phone call. Third, you have to audit your assets. We only know exactly what was stolen because of an eventual audit. Use tools to monitor your credit and accounts in real time so you know the second something moves. Saddam Hussein was eventually found in a hole in the ground 9 months later. The man who authorized the theft of $1 billion was caught with exactly $100 in his pocket. It is a powerful reminder that no matter how big the heist is, the trail always leaves a mark. The empty vaults in Baghdad still stand as a ghost of what was taken. In our world, The heists are getting bigger, and the hackers are getting faster. The stakes are higher than they have ever been. I am the digital sleuth. Stay paranoid. Stay secure. And I will see you in the next investigation.